Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 24 of My Hero Academia Season 6, and I realized something this week. As I was gearing up for this episode, I was like, oh man, it's the last episode of the season, oh, ho, ho, ho. And I said that in the last reaction, and so I'm sure no one corrected me on Patreon, but they may not have heard me say it, and I was like, wait a minute. Don't we usually have 25 episodes this season? So I went and got on my search engine and was like, how many episodes are in season 6 of My Hero Academia? And they were like 25. And I was like, oh, so surprise, penultimate episode, not the end of the season, which honestly, I mean, is fine. I'm glad for it. I was like, oh, cool, we've got one more episode. So this is not the last episode of the season. It is the penultimate episode. Next week will be the last episode. I was like, oh my gosh, Romania. So it was a nice, pleasant surprise, but I was really sure. I was like, I always feel like My Hero Academia has a weird episode count because usually it's like 12 or 25. So whenever there's a 13 episode season or a 25 episode season, I'm like, oh, it just feels like a little extra, feels like something fun that you get, like it's a little treat that you get at the end of the season. So this is not the last episode. It is not. We have one more after this, which is exciting. But I'll have an update on YouTube of what I'm going to be doing for Mondays after My Hero Academia is over, because I am still going to react to Heaven Official's Blessing, obviously, but I have another show in mind that will come later this spring, and there's some like odds and ends stuff. So there'll be a video on my channel called April Updates that come out, or it's already out on Patreon right now, but by the time you watch this on YouTube, it will also be out on my channel. So go check that out if you want to know what's happening after My Hero Academia. But yeah, so the last episode was really, really good. Really emotional with Bakugo having a full-on character arc cemented from this series, which good for him. 6 seasons. Got to the point where he was like, yep. So I was really happy that Bakugo was able to get his apology to Deku out, and Deku's classmates all came together to show him, like, you're not in this alone. We all signed up to be heroes. We are with you together. Please come back to UA. We don't want you to have to bear this burden by yourself. It's too much. It's okay to rely on other people. And we know it's dangerous, so it's okay. And I feel like Deku's like, he's still so nervous. And we ended the episode with, of course, the citizens being the citizens of Townsville, the citizens of Hero Society here right outside UA being like, we don't want him to come. He's going to put us in danger. And so now it's like, okay, what do we do now? Because Deku is all but convinced that he just can't go back to UA, even after his friends have like been there to support him. So what do we do in this case? So that is the big question. And I think there are going to be things that can be done. It's just a matter of them happening. So I'm like, come on, Deku, honey. So we'll see, right? We'll see how this goes. But I am really excited. There's obviously things I want to talk about, but they're spoilers, so I'm going to save them until after this episode to see what happens. I haven't checked up on the manga to see what's going to happen this episode. I have an idea, but I want to see it go down and to see where we get to, and then we can talk about it afterwards, and then the spoiler discussion for next week. So good on you, right? But I'm really excited, y'all. I woke up this morning and was like, it is time. So we're going to start episode 24 of My Hero Academia Season 6. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's do this, y'all. Aww. This was a great episode. This was a great episode. I'm actually really surprised because, like I told y'all, I have not read the manga since it came out because I knew I would be reacting to this series. And so when we got to the midpoint of this episode, I had every intention and every thought in my brain that this entire thing with Ochako's speech would last the entire episode. It doesn't. It's only halfway, and then we start the rest talking about what to do after the fact. So I was like, oh yeah, because this is only, I feel like it's only a few chapters in the manga. I could be wrong, and I'm sure somebody down below will know. We'll go back to the manga and check. But I feel like it's much it felt longer in the manga, and so when it just like all happens, but again, it could be the way that Horikoshi spreads it out and does all of this. That could be the case, but it felt like it was a lot bigger and longer section in the manga, but maybe that's because it's such a big pivotal moment. It's something Ochako has been thinking about for a very long time, in that when heroes are in danger, who helps them? And it's this connection between the rest of society, the people that aren't heroes and the people that are heroes. So it's not only heroes that help heroes, but whenever they're down, it's the people around them that support them. And that kind of makes a lot of sense, because what's been happening is that people have been basically deteriorating the hope of heroes. The people that they're meant to protect and help, them not giving that gratitude back, or not giving that love and care and understanding back, has made them all just feel hopeless and want to give up. And so it's one of those things where it's the hope and care and understanding of people that aren't heroes supports the heroes themselves, but the very opposite can happen when it's not there. And so Ochako takes this moment to just kind of be a springboard and a platform to be like, look, we've got to support these heroes, otherwise they're fighting for you, and if you don't support them, then there's nothing for them to fight for. Like, the ones that were doing it for fame and money and fame and fortune, they've left. They're out. They pieced out. So the ones that are left are protecting you, and they're here because they want to be. They're not here for the money or the fame. That's not even on the table anymore. So she's like, you guys need to get your acts together and support the heroes trying to save your asses. It's like, I love when she just cuts that one guy off. That guy's like, but she's like, no! I was like, good Ochako, good Araka. Like, tell that guy to shut up. Like, I've got the spirit stick. I have the microphone. Let me talk. Don't try to mansplain me. Like, I love it. I love this moment for Ochako. But it's so good. But it's just like the idea that one for all connects everyone together. The idea that all for one is stealing everyone's powers and quirks for one person. And one for all is kind of the antithesis of that, where it's actually giving back to everyone. It's a power that enables someone to connect people together. And I love that Horikoshi uses this as the message, and like the rain is still coming down, it's still gloomy, and I like that they establish it's not a cure-all. Like, they're like, look, just because we give Deku this shelter, it's not going to solve everything. Now Deku says he's going to take it all back, and I'm like, you make a big promise, you got to uphold it though, right? You're making a big promise, you got to stick to it, right? Like, oh my god. But yeah, I want to go through this episode with y'all. It was just really good. Nezu, I've been hesitant to call him. I've been like, I know he's the president. I've been hesitant to call him by name because I thought it was Nezuko, but I'm thinking of number 6. But Nezuko means rat. So Nezu is a connection to that. I kept wanting to say Nezuko, and I'm like, I don't think that's right. And it's Nezu. But yeah, reinforcing the barrier so that it's not... Dude has had all the time in the world to be getting this done. But to be fair, I think what's kind of funny about this series is that on a realistic plane, we could look at this episode and go, there is no way in hell that within a year or less, they had time to do all of these safety measures like they did. That's ridiculous. But Horikoshi kind of gets a pass because it's a superhero series. There are individuals with quirks that enable them to do things normal humans can't at accelerated speeds. So, because it's a superhero, it's kind of like a little plot pass. You can say that all of this was capable of getting done because superhero society exists. So I'm like, Horikoshi conveniently like plotted himself into a situation where this could happen. And I was like, good on you, Horikoshi. At this point, sure. But what I love about this, like I said in the reaction, that Bakugo and the others are fully there to support Deku. But what I love about this is that Nezu is like, look, this is not something we can do alone. We need the people's support. And we need to take these extra steps. Sometimes taking the extra step is harder, but it will have the bigger and better payoff. So we can't cut corners with this. We've got to do this the hard way. And it will all be worth it in the end if we just trust ourselves and trust the methods we're putting into place. And I like that Nezu is this very responsible adult presence for these kids, because like All Might is jaded in his own ways, Endeavor is jaded in his own ways, Hawks is barely an adult, so you need like a full-on adult presence that has this calm and rationale to him. And even though back in, the episodes where Nezu was like, had the crane and was torturing Kirishima and them, he is the most stable presence right now because he's not out there doing all the hero work that like President Mike and them are doing, but he's a step above just society that has no clue what's going on. He's kind of in the know, has resources, but he's not taxing himself out there constantly, so he's able to be this support system. And that's great. I like Nezu getting the support, and him being on Ectoplasm's hand the whole time out there. It was really cute. There were some animations where they did close-ups of his faces. I'm like, he's adorable. Like, just the big beady eyes. But man, this was a really, really good episode. And I love the idea that they established Midorima is valuable. He's valuable as a person. He's valuable as a hero. He is a necessary asset. We need to protect him. Not only because we love him, but because he is important too. But also, I like that UA is able to buy the country's latest defense technologies at wholesale. I'm like, there's a little tongue-in-cheek military joke there about budgets and things like that. It's kind of funny. But they bring up some really good points where they're like, look, we're getting this place as secure as Tartarus. And then Momo's like, yeah, Shigaraki broke into Tartarus, so it's not as safe as we thought it was. What do we do? And they do establish about how last year UA was broken into. It's hard to believe it's only been, in the scope of 6 seasons, it's only been less than a year. It feels like it's been, many years for the audience, but yeah, like how much changes in 1 year is insanity, right? Shigaraki was a little beanpole back in season 1, and now he's got an 8-pack, right? But yeah, the whole idea, which granted, them breaking into UA, Kurogiri had a big part in that too, so we can't forget that. And God, having the Nomu and everything. And so I like that they established that UA is mobile. UA can go. It can go places. UA is not just a defensive wall. It can move. And I love that Nezuko establishes, he's like, let me tell you all about my plan. It feels like the game Mousetrap is what I was trying to say in the episode. Like, there's just like a maze, like everything. And Nezu is like a big strategist. So he kind of reveals his hand here being like, look, the grounds are all divided into a grid. And the grid has a driving mechanism all its own. And it can be an emergency shelter. It can move underground. It has moving parts that can intricately go. It reminds me of Cabin in the Woods, where there's this underground setup over this seemingly normal landscape. I love that Kaminari says, it's like a mech anime. Kaminari's like, this is like Gundam. It's like Neon Genesis. And I'm like, let's not make it like Neon Genesis for the sake of our heroes' mentalities. But he's like, if the system breaks down, it's not going to work. So yeah, Nezu's like, look, we've put this elaborate mechanism in place to make it efficient. But if it breaks down, we're screwed. Like, it will do nothing for us. So because of that, he's like, the underground near the system, there are 3,000 layers of reinforced plates that if they detect anything abnormal, the interception system activates. The supports unlock and the defensive walls can move independently and can delay any kind of attack. Yeah, and in the meantime, the shelters will follow this safe route, and it has places that security systems are on par with UA's to places that are like Shinketsu Academy, which has increased its defenses. So basically, if something goes down while UA is like this, it will move the shelters to another academy. It'll move them somewhere else, right? Which is nice. I like the idea that the academy, it has the potential to move around. That's really good. I like that. It's like that way we can go somewhere else that's safe. So we can get away from the villains. And I like that Sarah recognized like how far away that is. It's like we're going from east to west, essentially. Like, there's been a lot of preparation to make this happen. I love it. I love also that Bakugo and Shoto, as they establish this really funny thing with Shinketsu, they both kind of look at each other and they're like, yeah, we remember them. I love that this is this one moment where Bakugo and Shoto kind of have like yeah, remember those days? Seems like so long ago, right? That's really, really funny. And then Tokiyami kind of hits it on the head. He's like, that seems like a measure to prevent Shigaraki's decay that can move through other objects. And Momo's like, well, we didn't know about that. And Nezu's like, I was just prepping for any intuition I had. So Nezu kind of becomes L in this moment from Death Note and is like, I have an intuition and a thought and I'm just following my gut with it. See where it goes. And it just happened to work out. But Nezu he's establishing that he is the type of thinker that plans for any case scenario. He's like Momoy from Kuroko's Basketball. He's planning for any possibility that might come up, right? is what he's getting at. And then they establish that's really expensive. This whole thing, even if we had a budget in place in the military, is really expensive. And Endeavor establishes that Nezu is like this philanthropist. He's this $1 billion philanthropist. Speaking of Death Note, he's like Watari and is able to have all this money to do what he wants. And he says that he basically says that, look, what it comes down to is that this entire situation with society boils down to a lack of understanding and an intolerance of others, which are things Nezu, we see the scar on his face, we know his past where he's been experimented on. He's like, I know all too well the horrors of that. And so he can kind of connect to Deku in this moment and is like, I know how Deku feels. And he's like, I don't want that to happen to a kid. So he's like, that is why I will go to any length to make sure that this lack of understanding kind of ceases. Taking the extra step is the hard path, but it's the one that's going to be worth it. So, man, they animate Deku so well in this episode. Like, his heartbreak, his pain. I mean, they have the big googly tears that are, like, overdone. But there are some facial expressions I was like, oh, my God. Like, they really hit hard. Like, as hard as the manga, if not harder. Where it's like, geez. Just the look on his face. I also like the idea that the heroes are all out in the rain. Like, Nezu is standing there without an umbrella. The heroes don't have an umbrella. They're all out getting rained upon while the civilians have protected themselves, right? And there's definitely like a symbolism there. But Inko Midorimo, she's like reaching out for her son. And I love that Bakugo's mom is holding her back. Like, she's like, don't worry, your future son-in-law's there. It's fine. Which I have always shipped. If I was going to ship Deku with anybody, I've always shipped Deku with either Ochako or Bakugo. But if I'm being honest, they're kind of like an OT3, Bakugo and Deku and Ochako for me, because I've also shipped Ochako with Bakugo, which there's moments in this anime, in this episode, where Bakugo kind of looks up at Ochako like, she's good. Like, you know, like Bakugo's always kind of known that Ochako's been a strong character. So I kind of have like an OT3 going with them. It's like simultaneous OT3s. I either ship Bakugo with Kirishima or Deku, and I either ship Deku with Ochako or Bakugo, and then Bakugo either with Kirishima or Ochako, or Deku. So it's like, it's this big, basically, Bakugo is in this like love square for me, and I'm fine with it. I can multi-ship. That's the good thing about My Hero Academia, is you definitely can do it. And I like that at first I thought like the thing on the guy's cell phone was like the Batman was kind of like one of those National Enquirer like parodies, but he was actually the news anchor, right? And Present Mike, who has a quirk that's literally voice, using his voice to have him try to hold people back and it not working is insane. And I know some people are going to say, well, if Present Mike couldn't do it, why could Ochako? And I think it's because Present Mike was like just trying to like just say anything to make them be quiet, and Ochako is saying things to make them understand. So there's a difference, right? There's a difference in listening and understanding. And so I think that that's the big difference there. But Best Jeanist, it says a lot that Best Jeanist is such a reliable presence and revered presence amongst the crowd. And again, there are so many things Horikoshi does in this series that build upon each other and connect back to things that the audience is like, oh, wow, that was way back when. And way back at the beginning of the series, it was established Best Jeanist was like a fan favorite. Everybody loves him. Whether he's the strongest or not isn't relevant. It's the fact that people rely upon him and believe in him. And even when the douche lords in the crowd are kind of getting, you know, skeptical of him, nobody really turns on Best Jeanist. So having that presence there, I get now why Horikoshi brought him back and makes him in this series be the way he is, because he is important. He is a character. You need a fan favorite to kind of unite the people together, right? And then you also need heroes that are strong enough to defend them. So in hindsight, it makes sense why Horikoshi didn't kill him off. Best Jeanist needed to be there to be that reliable presence, because none of the other heroes have the track record Best Jeanist does, right? Endeavor's being totally, you know, people are skeptical about him right now. He's under the radar, under a microscope. Best Jeanist is the one character that everybody kind of still has the same feelings towards. So that's really important, right? But yeah, then there's this one guy with a trucker hat coming in to be skeptical. and saying, you call yourselves heroes. And man, just the lighting, the red with the purple. And there's little kids in that crowd, and the mob mentality happens. There's little kids like getting pushed and shoved aside. Like, it's so realistic. That's what's scary about it. It's very realistic. And you're just sitting there watching going, yep, surprising no one. But man, Deku's face and all of this, like, I feel so bad for him. Like, the people that had to animate him looking like horrified. His mom's there crying. I like that Ochako, when she does this, it's a very zen, like, infinity sign. Like, she just has that moment. And then I love that she steals the microphone. And the anime does a nice job of having her walk past President Mike with the microphone. And then when you see her leap, she has it in her hands. Like, she grabbed it without him knowing it. And her parents sitting there watching. That shot where Bakugo, like, stares up at her. He has this look on his face like he knows what she's about to do. Yeah, I'm like, ugh, I love it. I love it so much. But her saying, and her, like, shutting that guy up. I was like, thank goodness. And then at first she's kind of hesitant at first, but then she says what's on her mind. She's like, look at him. He's fighting for you. He looks like hell. Does he look like he is invincible? Because he's not. Like, that's the thing. She says he has special powers, but he is not special. And that kind of same mentality and message gets reverberated in Mob Psycho. It's in here. It's in Attack on Titan. It's the idea that, yeah, people can have special abilities and talents, but that does not make them any more powerful or invulnerable than anyone else that doesn't have those same abilities. She's like, Deku is just as vulnerable and delicate as any of us. And so he still needs to be treated as a human, not as a god, not as anything, but as a human. And because he's no different than us. He's like, he needs rest and support just as much as anybody else. And that's kind of the big thesis of this episode in relation to the series, is that for a long time in this series, the heroes are put up on this big pedestal on this stage, and there's all this fanfare when they do the top 10 heroes. It makes them seem larger than life, and it makes them seem more than human, right? And All Might kind of perpetuated that. All Might, for better or worse, kind of elevated that mentality where everybody thought he was just this invincible person. But the reality is that that's all an act. It's all theater. It's all a facade. That they put on a show and act really, act like everything is right as rain, when in reality, they're no different than anybody else. They have bad days. They have dark pasts like Endeavor, and they need support just like anybody else does. And I love that that's kind of the message of this episode, being like, you all need to support Deku because he's just like you. He needs that support. And Bakugo standing beside him is like, look at what Ochako's doing. Do you hear what she's saying? We're going to help clean up the messes. You can't do it because you can't do it all yourself. You're not any better than us. You have talents and things we can't do, but we have things that you can't do either. And Nezu is sitting there saying, like, once people take that extra step, it's hard, but if it goes well and goes the right way, the rewards are going to be ones that we can reap so much better. And then I love that we see her family sitting there with her, and she's not looking at the hero as a kid. She's looking at the people supporting the hero. And that's like what she wants to do, right? I also love that Ochako always has a theme of knowing her parents look tired. Her parents who don't have a quirk, or their quirks are really weak. Like the idea that they don't have like the ability to be heroes, but she wants to like support them. I love that. Also, I love that Ochako, she has her mom's hair, her face, and her eyes, but she has her dad's eyebrows. I've always wondered, I'm like, what does Ochako take from her dad? It's his eyebrows. I love it. I love that. So cute, right? It's so sweet. And she's like, my eyes didn't go to the heroes, but to the faces around them. And then, and Deku, she's like, our hero, she's like, we're going to get covered in mud. We're going to get dirty. And we need time to clean it off like anybody else would. She's like, so you guys are going to have to work with us. Otherwise, we can't do our jobs to protect you. And you're going to need us. And she's like, we need to all work together for the sake of everyone's smiles. And I love it. I love that that's the message of them all getting connected as one together, and that if we're going to smile and have a good future, we have to do it together. It's just, It's like Horikoshi. It's so good. And I like that it takes her as a hero to say that, to get them all thinking about it. And of course, Inko and Midorima, Inko and Midoriya, they're just like crying rivers. They're like genetically crying. Like both of them genetically tear up at the smallest thing. But it's so beautiful. And they're like, look, Deku's not perfect. He has a lot to learn. But please let this still be his place he can go to. Let this be his sanctuary. And I love that Koda, I wanted to call him Koda, so I was waiting to see if we got his name. So Koda and then the fox girl, I love that they go to his side. Like, that's such a beautiful scene. And the manga captures it wonderfully, right? It's so good. And then, yeah, I like that Minetta's like gonna try to go to Deku. I love Minetta's like, Deku. And Seto's like, whoa, the fandom does not want you anywhere near that ship anymore. But in reality, Sero's like, look, no, we have time to support Deku later. But right now, what's important is that it's the representation here is not the heroes supporting Deku, it's society supporting Deku. So Sero's like, let these others come to him. And I love Koda. I love the representation of Koda being like, you've been my hero, Deku, and I wanted to help you, and I wasn't sure what to do, and I want to be here for you now so that you don't have to cry anymore. Like, that's so beautiful. And then the one, like, he's someone, we have the representation of someone that's known Deku for a long time, and someone that's just met him. And both of them come together to support him, and it's so wonderful. It's so darn good. I love it so much. And then Horikoshi. I like that the one girl, the fox girl, the wolf girl, she says that like nobody else would take her in, and UA was the only place that would accept her. And Nezu, of course, that's the moment he has like the big giant sparkly eyes is when she comes to help Deku, because he sees somebody that's kind of like him going to support him in this moment. But I like that she says that nobody else would take her in except UA. And so she's like, it's because of people like you that I'm able to be accepted. And then this guy with the little star on either side of him. When I read the manga, I didn't realize this till the ED. He's been here since the beginning. He was there at that very first villain attack when Deku stepped in to save Bakugo. He's been there this whole time. Like, this just background character, this rando extra, has been there from the start. And Horikoshi didn't forget about him. He made him have a legit part in this. I'm like, Horikoshi! Horikoshi is the master of taking something from way back in the beginning and being like, and we're going to put this 6 seasons later. Oh my gosh. That's just such a mind-blowing little detail. And it's this guy, Ochako speaks on behalf of the heroes to try to get the public to understand. And this guy comes in and she connects it to him. We talk about the idea of all for one, or one for all. One for all connects from user to user. And the idea that in this story, All Might connected to Deku. Deku connected with Ochako. Ochako connected with Bakugo. Deku connected with Bakugo. They've all connected amongst each other. And now Ochako is connecting not only to Deku, but to the others as well. And the others are connecting to society. It's a ripple effect. And it's beautiful. And it gets them all together. And they acknowledge the fact that, yeah, we'd put heroes up on a pedestal, up on this stage, and we shouldn't have done that. Like, we kind of set this society up for ourselves, and so the moment it collapses, we're kind of all left to deal with the rubble. But he's like, that doesn't mean that we're doomed. We can still, we need to support the heroes fighting for us, because that's what they're fighting for it now. They don't have fame or money. They're fighting for us to be safe. And Deku just looks like a drowned rabbit. He just sits there with these big giant eyes. And that one guy, the guy with the ironic All Might shirt on that was questioning everything, says, will things go back to the way they will before? And Deku says they'll get it all back. I'm like, Deku, you're making promises. You're making promises. I mean, hopeful, right? I'm glad that he's being hopeful and giving this guy hope that they're gonna do what they can to make it all go back to the way it was. But I'm like, can they? Can they? It's a lot of work. I do want to make note that I do love the moment we get. I didn't realize that during this whole exchange, Shoto had gone over to where Endeavor and Hawks were. I didn't realize that in the manga. I was like, oh, he's right there with Endeavor and Hawks. Oh, there he is. But that moment where Shoto is like, what do we do? You know, looking at Endeavor, looking at his father and Hawks, like, in the end, we made Deku suffer. And the Hawks is the one like, no, this needs to happen. Like Endeavor still has like a kind of Debbie Downer approach, which he's dealing with enough. But Hawks like has this epiphany. Hawks has this like light bulb moment where he's like, no, there is progress. This is it. The fact that they're accepting Deku, this is the step that it's taking. Like, Hawks is like, no, this is good. And I like when you see Hawks and Endeavor side by side. Endeavor's scar goes down his face and Hawks goes up his face. It's like they're meeting. They're like yin and yang, which is not doing anything for me shipping. But yeah, he's like, this is progress. And then that's when Hawks says, look, one for all is the crystallization of power spun together by people's hearts. He's like, All Might connected to Midoriya. And Midoriya connected to his class. And the class connected to everyone else. So he's like, no, this is it. He's like, if we're able to think about everyone else a little bit more and connect to each other, he's like, heroes have too much time. He's like, heroes have enough on their plates. This is a way to spread things out. And we get all of them like talking with the people. Like everybody starts to mingle at this point where the heroes come together and talk with each other, right? And we see Deku with his mom and Koda, which is so cute. And Mineta's there too. And then we see, I like that everyone's talking with the people, but Bakugo like storms off. He's like, I don't want to talk to any of you. Like Bakugo like just walks off, right? And gets out of there. And Shoto kind of looks. And that's when Shoto looks at us. And Shoto, when he hears that, he looks over his dad and he's like, Dad, we're in this together. Which is huge. It's huge for Shoto to say that to his father. It's like mind-blowing, right? Insanity. But that's what happens. It's so good, y'all. It's so good. And then I love that. And I love that Endeavor's like, yeah, sure, having this moment. And then Nezu's like, I couldn't have done this. Like, I had all these wild ideals of doing this, but I couldn't have done it on my own. Again, connecting to that idea that he's like, I couldn't have connected these people on my own. I needed class 1A to do this. I needed your students. And so he's like, you're a good teacher, Aizawa. And I just love how happy Aizawa looks. Like, he looks so proud of his kids. He's like, tell the class rep he did a good job. I just love how happy Aizawa looks. Like, he looks so sincere and heart-warmed there. And he's getting like his metal foot. He's got the eye patch. And so they've transported Kurogiri to the hospital, which, for better or worse, right? Because Kurogiri's at the hospital now, so Aizawa's been talking to him every day, but it's a dangerous thing, right? Dangerous. And so he's like, just every little step has made things been a little bit safer. Every little step's been important. Now, Toga, we get two little brief references of Toga in this episode. One is Ochako realizing that connecting to the people is not enough. In this moment, I think Ochako wants to connect to Toga. She's like, we've just spouted off how heroes are no different than anybody else. They have special powers, but they are not special. They are vulnerable too. And that brief moment, she has that flash of Toga. She's like, well, shit. Villains are the same way. They're still people. They still have vulnerabilities. She's like, I need to connect to Toga as well. And so I feel like it does this nice job of establishing that Ochako has Toga she wants to connect with, and Deku has Shigaraki he wants to connect with. And it's like, so good. And then Aizawa has Kurogiri that he wants to connect with, right? They all want to connect back to the human that's inside of the individual, right? And it's so good. But it's kind of bittersweet because in the one vein, you have Ochako realizing that Toga needs to be reached out to and to talk to before things get bad. And then on the other side of things, we have Nezu saying, we've put extra measures in place to keep Toga out of here because she's dangerous. And it makes sense. She's got a quirk that is super dangerous now. She's just as dangerous as Twice was. And so it's really scary. But then at the same time, it's like we're doing all these measures to keep Shigaraki and Toga out of UA because we need to for everyone's safety. But at some point, we're going to have to address them. So it's painting this big picture of what could be to come, right? And then All Might leaves in his All Might mobile to go and try to round up some of the people left that aren't evacuating. And he's looking back and thinking about, like, what do I do for Deku now? I said I was going to keep with him and help him. What more can I do? And at that point, we get Stain. Stain just shows up, which is great. But yeah, who knew? Who knew we'd have all these moments with these characters? Oh. We still have one episode left to go. We still have next week's episode, so I'm really excited about that. I'm ready for that. But I've got a few spoiler corner things I want to talk about before we end this episode, but I've really, really enjoyed season 6 and how they've animated these moments. It's been great to see them animated. I like it a lot. But I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. If you're not sticking around for spoilers, I'm curious to know your thoughts on the episode and how you thought it all went down. I thought it was adapted well, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts too. So if you're not sticking around for the spoiler corner, have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon next week with our season finale of My Hero Academia. Oh man, this episode was great. I again was thinking in the manga that Ochako's part was a lot longer than it was, because it seemed like, and maybe there were some breaks around that time to where we were waiting a while in between chapters. I have heard recently that Horikoshi has been sick, so they kind of delayed the manga. I think that's fine. I'm glad. I hope Horikoshi starts feeling better. They put out a little picture this morning on Twitter showing Deku's shoes saying, "Thanks for watching the anime." So they're clearly okay. They just don't feel well. I'm glad that we're at a state in manga world where if a mangaka needs to take time off, they can. And I think that Akutami and Horikoshi kind of almost set the standard for that. If I'm being honest, I feel like around the time that they started taking weeks off, that it became like an established thing. Like, no, we need time off, and you're either going to give it to us or you're not going to have a series. And I think that Shonen Jump is desperate enough for these two series that they're like, okay, sure, take all the time you need. You're our moneymaker, which is a sad, cynical way to view it, but I also think that's part of it. So that's the reality of it. I mean, you could argue that Oda set the precedent for that because he takes lots of breaks, but Oda's been around for like 30 years as a mangaka, and at this point he's like, you're gonna let me do what I want because I have the money. I don't need to continue this series. I'm doing it because I want to. And they're like, okay. So they're like, yeah, sure, Oda, you do whatever you want. And he does, and it's fine, right? I've been reading One Piece for like 20 years, so what do we do? But yeah, as far as spoilers go, I had forgotten that there was an episode after this. And so I was genuinely curious about what they were going to, I was like, are they going to end with, I thought they were going to end the season with this episode, and I thought it was going to end with Deku going into UA, because I remember that happening, and he was going to go into UA, and it was going to be like this big coming together moment. And the phrase, this is the story of how we all became the greatest heroes. There's still the line, this is the story of how I became the greatest hero, but it's also now tweaked to add everyone else, right? This is how the story of we became the greatest heroes. And I like that. It's cheesy, but it fits the superhero motif, so I'm fine with it. I think it's cute. It's fun. So I'm all on board with it. But yeah, I really like where this story goes. At this point in the series, I thought that it was going to end with Ochako just having her speech and Deku going in, but we're getting one more episode. So I'm curious. I don't remember if Stain and All Might have the conversation yet. I'm going to be curious if we get that next episode of Stain and All Might talking. I'm curious if they're going to preview Stars and Stripes for us, if they're going to preview All for One making a move or getting ready to make a move. I'm very curious what they're going to preview for us, because honestly, I kind of know where the manga goes to. I know where the manga is right now, but this part is a little bit fuzzy to me, because after the speech, between Ochako's speech and Stars and Stripes showing up, it's a little bit fuzzy for me. And maybe there's not that much in between, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on what's in between. So honestly, next week is going to be a total surprise for me as a reactor, because I don't remember what happens at this point. I feel like this is a good point for the anime to end for the season, because it's right at, we're setting up things to come, but we're ending things happening this episode. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen, but I've not read the latest chapter that's come out. I've not read the latest chapter because Horikoshi's been sick, so I knew I had time to read it and catch up, but I also nearly gave away a spoiler in the reaction, because when they said, oh, UA can move, I was about to be like, yeah, up into the sky, because that's where it ends up at. But no, that's not the case. It's the whole underground part in the shelters. So I'm like, that's going to be a huge thing. Bones, you're going to have to animate a lot. Hope you're ready. I know you're taking on a new project, but hope you're ready. So I always feel like My Hero Academia gets the shaft with Bones. Like, Bungo Stray Dogs looks gorgeous this episode. Mob Psycho season 3 so far has been gorgeous. And this series has been really nice. It's been good, but you can tell it's like the third child. You can tell that it's not their critical darling. It's not their favorite. And so they're just like, eh. I always feel like it's an afterthought, which is sad because Horikoshi has some gorgeous illustrations. Their artwork is beautiful. And I'm like, and you can't say that it's the art style holding them back, because I've seen some episodes of One Piece lately and I'm like, holy shit. Like, everybody gives Oda a hard time because they say his art style's ugly. And it can be very hard to read, but I'm like, they've made it look absolutely stunning. So you cannot say that it's the art style holding an animator back. That's BS. So I feel kind of sad sometimes because I think that people give the My Hero Academia anime kind of a bad rap in these later seasons, when I'm like, no, it is really good. That I just wish Bones would step it up a notch, because they totally could. But, oh well, maybe they will for the next season. I don't know. But I am excited. The whole thing with Toga, that's such a messy plot, right? Because in the current manga, we know that she's like using Twice's ability and she's a big threat and they want to get rid of her. And Ochako's like, but we need to save her. Ochako and Deku kind of had the same struggle. They're trying to save a villain and save the human inside. And it's very intriguing. So, but yeah, I'm very curious to know all of your thoughts down below. Best Genist, again, Horikoshi, it makes so much sense why he's not dead now. We need him, and we definitely need him in the current manga, so season 6 is going to be interesting. There's some crazy stuff going on in that season. It's going to be interesting, but that's enough for spoilers. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts down below. I really have enjoyed these last several episodes, and the animation on Deku has been so good. Bless his heart. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, next week, y'all, the season finale of My Hero Academia. I'll see y'all then. Bye.